Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe Jayo Kṛṣṇa Balaram Kṛṣṇa Balaram Kṛṣṇa Balaram Jayo Kṛṣṇa Balaram Jayo Gauranitai 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 Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Janta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adigaur Bhaktavrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shyamakunda Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapur Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktavrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 80, Text 29. This is the second verse out of 12 verses that Sri Kṛṣṇa is speaking in conversation with Sudāmā Brahman Vipra. Prāyo gṛheṣu te cittam akāma-vihitaṁ tathā naivāti-prīyase vidvan dhaneṣu viditam hime prāyo gṛheṣu te cittam akāma-vihitaṁ tathā naivāti-prīyase vidvan dhaneṣu viditam hime prāyo gṛheṣu te cittam akāma-vihitam tathā naivāti-prīyase vidvan dhaneṣu viditam hime
prāyo gṛheṣu te cittam akāma-vihitam tathā naivāti-prīyase vidvan dhaneṣu viditam hime
Mataji's? Prāyaḥ, for the most part, gṛheṣu, in household affairs, te, your, cittam, mind, akāma-vihitam, uninfluenced by material desires, tathā, also, na, not, eva, indeed, ati, very much, prīyase, you take pleasure, vidvan, O wise one, dhaneṣu, in the pursuit of material wealth, viditam, it is known, he, indeed, may, by me. Translation. Even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires, nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. This I am well aware of. We can repeat together. Even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires, nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. This I am well aware of. Purport. Lord Kṛṣṇa here reveals that, in fact, he was well aware of his friend's situation. Sudāmā was actually learned and spiritually advanced, and therefore he was not interested in ordinary sense gratification, as is the common man. Om ajnana-timirandasya jnananjana salakaya chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya manobhistam stapitam jena bhutale swayam rupa kadanayam dadati svapadantekam. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adigor Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this chapter, we're getting a glimpse into the love-drenched pastimes of Sri Krishna's exchanges with his devotees. We have to remember that when Sri Krishna descends to this material world, he's coming for a purpose. In the spiritual world, he's enjoying unlimitedly the aprakat lila that we cannot see on this mundane realm. In that aprakat realm, Krishna has many different, unlimited number of devotees, limited number of realms or planets, lokas, Vaikuntha lokas, Goloka, Mathura loka, Dwarka loka, Navadvip loka, so many different places where his unlimited devotees are enjoying with him without cessation. But then out of compassion for fallen souls such as ourselves, he decides to descend here to the material world in his prakat lila and display a small portion of the pastimes, the loving pastimes that are going on in the eternal spiritual world. Just as when the sun rises, it comes up for some time, comes to the middle of the sky, and then it disappears. That's within our limited vision. The sun never disappears, but it's just as much as we can see at the time of its rising and setting. So the Lord's pastimes are eternal. And when he comes here, he displays just enough so that we can become attracted to his pastimes and develop a strong enough desire to give up our material aspirations and return to the spiritual world and enjoy with him eternally. Now, in this particular pastime, this is an exchange between Sri Krishna and one of his eternal suhritsakas named Sudāmā. Sometimes he's named Sudāmā, sometimes in other Puranas he's named Sridama, and sometimes he's even named Damodar. Many different names for the same person. Now this name Sudāmā comes up in other personalities as well. In Braja Lila, in Mathura Lila, in Avantipur Lila, and now in Dwarka Lila. In Braja Lila, Krishna has 4 very special friends, Sridam, Sudam, Dhamma, and Vasudam. And he's enjoying with them every day, the cowherd boyfriends. Some of them are Priyanarmasakas, that means they take part in Krishna's most intimate pastimes when they do exchanges of messages between the gopis. Some of them are Priyasakas, such as Sudāmā. He's playing with Krishna on an equal level. He challenges Krishna. He puts his arm around Krishna. They eat together. They enjoy together all throughout the day. And then some of them are ordinary sakas, younger than Krishna. And some of them, each one of these sakas have such a loving relationship with Krishna that if they don't see him even for a minute, they feel like their life is finished. These are Krishna's friends. These are the Braja friends. Now Krishna, when he leaves Braja, he also has city friends. He has friends in Mathura, such as Uddhava. He has friends in Hastinapur, such as Arjun. The rest of the Pandavas, they all have different relationships with Krishna. And he has friends in Dwarka as well. And when Krishna, when he had to leave Braja and go to Mathura, of course, Krishna grew up, both Krishna and Balaram had a very unusual childhood. Krishna got to be with his parents for just a few minutes. And then he was put into the foster care of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda throughout his entire childhood. Balaram never even got to see his real parents, Devaki and Vasudeva, because he was put into the womb of Rohini, and Rohini raised him in Braja along with Kṛṣṇa. So for 10 years, 7 months, they never got to see their real parents, Devaki and Vasudeva. Then when Akrura came and related to Kṛṣṇa and Balaram how their parents were actually suffering so much on account of them, they decided to go to Mathura and kill this terrible tormentor, Kamsa. So then they were in Mathura. They assured Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj they would just come back as soon as they finished their business going to the dhaneṣu yagya. But seeing the deplorable condition, how much Devaki and Vasudeva had suffered, they assured Nanda Maharaj that let me just satisfy our friends, the Yadus, for some time, and then I'll come back. But that coming back got extended. Jarasandha came, Kaliyavana came, then Kṛṣṇa had to transfer everyone to Dwarka. Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj, they were just half dead, waiting for Kṛṣṇa to return, along with all the associates of Kṛṣṇa in Braja, especially the cowherd boys. The cowherd boys, they would go out with Kṛṣṇa every day for herding the cows. Without seeing Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, the cows wouldn't even move. So Kṛṣṇa had his friends dress up as him and Balaram, thinking that then the cows would think that Kṛṣṇa and Balaram were there. In the meantime, Kṛṣṇa and Balaram were also suffering so much in Mathura. But now that they had accepted their Kshatriya parents of Devaki and Vasudeva, and they were already over 10 years old, they had had no education whatsoever, because they were Vaishyas at that time. They were doing the work of their father, Nanda Maharaj. So then Vasudeva and the elders decided it was time for Kṛṣṇa and Balaram to get their second initiation as Dvijas, and they called Gargamuni. He performed the ceremony. But Kṛṣṇa sent a message to Nanda Maharaj because he intentionally did not have the Brijbasis come for that ceremony. He said, you perform the same ceremony because actually I'm not a Kshatriya. I'm a Vaishya. You are my real parents. So while I'm having my second initiation here in Mathura, you perform the same initiation, you dress up 2 boys just like us, and you have us do the Vaishya Dvija ceremony. So same time, they were initiated both as Vaishyas and as Kshatriyas. Now after the second initiation, you have to take your education. And Kṛṣṇa and Balaram understood there's so many great Vaishnav gurus, but all these Vaishnav gurus, because they're so elevated, they know who we are. So how can we serve them? So better we find someone that has no idea of our real identities. So in Braj, we know that Purnamasi, she was told by her guru, Nanda Maharaj, that Kṛṣṇa is now having his pastimes. You go there, you take part. So Purnamasi, she was the mother of Sandipani Muni. So Kṛṣṇa and Balaram already knew about Sandipani Muni, and he was of Shiv Bhakta. His father, Sandipana, was from Kashi, and they came to live in the place of Mahakal, that's Avantipur, nowadays called Ujjain or Ujjayini, and they worshipped Lord Shiva. And Sandipani Muni, because at that time there was a great drought, he worshipped Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva gave a blessing to all of Ujjain that there would never be any drought. He was so devoted to Lord Shiva and to that place. So he made his residence there in Ujjain, and he had thousands of disciples. So Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, they knew that if anyone found out that they were going all the way to Ujjain, which is 550 kilometers away from Mathura, quite far, and we can just take a 20-minute airplane ride, or we can take an overnight train ride. But they were brahmacharis, and they were strict brahmacharis. Brahmachari means you don't go on any vehicle. You have to walk wherever you go. So they told Devaki and Vasudeva, and by that time Devaki and Vasudeva had brought Rohini, because Krishna and Balaram didn't know how to treat Devaki and Vasudeva like mother and father. They didn't even know them. But Rohini, when she came, she was able to give them the food that they liked, and she was able to soften and increase that motherly, fatherly relationship with Devaki and Vasudeva. So Rohini, she was beside herself that now the boys want to go all the way to Ujjain. They're already in Mathura, which is just a few kilometers away. Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj they'll die from separation if they hear that they've gone so far. So Krishna Balaram told Devaki and Vasudeva that you tell everyone that after our initiation, we're resting and we're here in Mathura. Also, if Jarasandha and the other demons here that we've left, they'll come to attack. So everyone believed that Krishna and Balaram were resting in Mathura. In the meantime, they dressed like brahmacharis. They had deer skin, they had kadira's danda, they had 2 cloths only, and they started to walk to Ujjain. All along the way, because if you walk even on the trains, if you see in UP, it's all villages. So all the villages that they went through, they were just remembering Vrindavan. And when they finally came to Ujjain, and they came to the ashram of Sanipani Muni, just as we have here the assemblies in the morning. So morning time, all the Brahmins were sitting with Sanipani Muni, their guru, and enter Krishna and Balaram. Such beautiful young boys, obviously not Brahmins, because they had all of the signatures of powerful Kshatriya young boys. So beautiful, so powerful. So Sanipani Muni saw them, all the Brahmins saw them. Within their heart, they surrendered to these beautiful young boys. But because they were Brahmins, and they saw that these were Kshatriya boys, nobody rose in the assembly. The boys came in, and because they were coming to become disciples, they brought firewood in their hands. This is exactly what's recommended for the brahmacharis. You place firewood at your guru's feet, because with that firewood they can perform their yagyas. And then they supplicated themselves. And the first thing, of course, Sanipani Muni asked, although he was so attracted to the young boys, who is your father? What is your lineage? And the boys didn't want anyone to know who they actually were. So they said, we're from the Yadava dynasty and from the Vasuta. Vasuta means a very wealthy family. But they wouldn't give the name of their actual father, Vasudeva. So Sanipani Muni ordered them that, yes, I accept you as my students. Now you go with my other students, because your duty now is to beg alms for the guru, and then I will give you education. So every day they would go out and beg from the mothers who all lived in Ujjain. And amongst the hundreds of students of Sanipani Muni, especially one of them became very close to Kṛṣṇa, and his name was Sudāmā. Now in Mathura also, there was a Sudāmā. He was the Mali. And that Sudāmā, he loved Kṛṣṇa so much that though he lived in Mathura, he would come here to Vrindavan to pick flowers in the gardens, and he would make garlands and give those garlands to Kṛṣṇa and Balaram. And we have the Sudāmā as the cowherd boy. So there were 3 Sudāmas, one in Vrindavan, one in Mathura, and Kṛṣṇa loved that Sudāmā Mali so much that when he went to Mathura, he asked, where does the Mali Sudāmā live? And he went to his home. Sudāmā was able to serve him. So now, because Kṛṣṇa and Balaram were missing their friends in Vrindavan so much, and they were so far away, when he heard that one of the young boys, Brahmin boys' names was Sudāmā, he became especially close to him, because he had the same name as his friend Sudāmā in Vrindavan. And one day, there were many pastimes, as one would naturally have every day in the Gurukul with their friends. But one winter day, there was unseasonal rain coming. The lightning and the thunder was flashing, and the Guru Mata, the wife of Sandipani Muni, she had to cook for everyone. And she was afraid that if it was going to rain now, the boys wouldn't be able to bring any dry wood. So she quickly ran out, and she told some of the boys, before it starts raining, you go and you get me some wood for the cooking. So the boys all got scared because they saw the lightning and the thunder. But Kṛṣṇa and Balaram, they said, yes, we will go. Now Sandipani Muni, he never gave any tasks to Kṛṣṇa and Balaram. He was so attached to them, and he could understand how elevated they were. But when Sandipani Muni wasn't present, then they would perform all types of tasks for him. So this was the Guru Mata asking, demanding, you boys have to go out and get me wood. So they immediately went out. Sudāmā and some of the other boys went along with them. And if you go to Ujjain, there's a forest outside of the city that has the best wood. So they went all the way to that forest. They were collecting the best dry wood that had fallen from the trees. And just then, the storm started. Torrents of rain. Actually, it's explained it wasn't an ordinary rain. It was a devastation rain. And the forest started to fill up with water. And they couldn't see whether the land was high or low. They couldn't see where to walk. They had all the wood bundled in their arms. It was getting dark. And they became completely bewildered how to get back home to the ashram. So the whole night they had to stay in the forest. Now Sandipani Muni didn't know because he never gave them instructions to go out. When he found out that his wife had sent the boys out, specifically the two boys, they had given their names as Sita and Asita. They weren't Kṛṣṇa and Balaram in the Gurukula, Sita and Asita. So when he found out his wife had sent those boys out, he rebuked her, he castigated her. I never give them chores. Why did you send these boys out? And he himself, as soon as the sun came out, he went out with the other boys to find the young boys. And he found them there in the forest. And at that time, when he found Kṛṣṇa and Balaram and Sudāmā, he gave them blessings. That normally, everyone is interested in their own body, because we have to protect our body in order to fulfill our desires in our life. But you boys, at the risk of your own body, you gave up your own comforts, came out here to get firewood for us, and here I see you were suffering so much. So I bless you. I bless you that everything that you have learned from me will never be worn out. Now, worn out means, for instance, when we cook something, there's a rule in cooking for their lordships that everything has to be offered within 3 hours of it being cooked. Otherwise, it loses its taste. So the same with education. We might learn something very nicely while we're in school, but after a certain amount of time, we forget it, especially if we don't use it. Therefore, mathematics. Who can remember all their algebra formulas? Not a single algebra formula can we remember because we don't use it. So that's called worn-out education. We learned it very nicely, we spoke it in the exam, and then we forgot it because we didn't use it. So Sandipani Muni gave this benediction that whatever you have learned from me will never become worn out. You will remember all your mantras, you will remember all your arts and sciences. So that was a great benediction from the spiritual master. And how they got that benediction? Because they sacrificed their own comforts. They were willing to undergo suffering in service of their spiritual master. So then at the time of graduation, of course, all the boys went back to their homes. Kṛṣṇa returned to Mathura, and eventually he went on to Dwarka. And Sudāmā, He was from a city, the same city that Gandhiji is from, Porbandar, in Gujarat. It's on the coastline. It's 105 kilometers from Dwarka. 105 kilometers, that's about from here to Delhi. Has anyone ever tried to walk to Delhi? No. Of course not. Why should we? But in those days, they didn't have cars, they didn't have planes, they didn't have trains. The only way to go was by bullock cart, by horse, or by walking. And if you were poor, then the only way to go was by walking. So Sudāmā returned to his home, and because of the varnashram, everyone has to be in a particular ashram. He had completed his brahmacharya, and the next ashram, unless he wanted to stay with Sandipani Muni as a sannyasi, next ashram would be gṛheṣu. So he dutifully married. But he was so renounced. The wife is called Bharya. And that means, Bharya means he is supposed to maintain the wife. But he didn't care about his own material comforts. His wife did the begging. And she begged, not for herself, she begged on behalf of her husband, because she had to feed him. So she would give the food to her husband. And therefore she was completely emaciated to the point where she trembled. So after many years like this, because when Kṛṣṇa went to Dwarka, then he had to kill all the demons. Finally, the last demons to be killed, Dantavakra and Vidurata, we're just studying about all that now in our Bhagavatam classes. After that, Kṛṣṇa put down his weapons. No more fighting. And he went back to Dwarka to live with his family members. At that late time, after Kṛṣṇa had killed all the demons, finally his wife, one day, the wife of Sudāmā Vipra, suggested to him, and she was afraid to even ask him. She said, I have heard that your friend is the husband of the goddess of fortune, and he is very merciful to all the Brahmins. Why don't you go and just take darshan of him? Certainly he will be merciful to you because you're his friend and you're also a genuine Brahmin. So Sudāmā Vipra, he didn't want to go in order to ask for anything, but he was thinking, yes, that would be wonderful if I could have darshan of my old friend Kṛṣṇa. So then he asked his wife, because the injunction is, you never go before the Supreme Lord, before the king, or before, I forget who the third one is, the Lord, the king, or the spiritual master, right, empty-handed. So he asked his wife, do you have anything that I can bring to Kṛṣṇa? She had nothing. So she went to her neighbors and she begged some chira, some chipped rice, and they gave her the old chira, the smelly ones. You know, sometimes chira, when it sits around, it has that buggy smell in it. And she had not even any cloth. She took a torn piece of cloth, wrapped it up in that, and he put it under his arm and started walking to Dwarka. So he walked, and the whole time he was walking, he was just meditating that, oh, I'll get to see my friend Kṛṣṇa again. Now, Sudāmā understood who Kṛṣṇa was. He knew he was the Supreme Lord. He knew he was the Paramatma, the soul in all souls. And he was thinking, how am I going to be able to enter into Kṛṣṇa's palace? I'm dirty, my clothes are all worn, I have nothing, I'm skinny. Why will they allow me to enter? And there was a huge defense line. 3 gates he had to pass. At each gate there were 45 soldiers, making sure that no one unqualified could enter. 45 soldiers, 9 elephants, 9 chariots, 17 horses, everything was very well fortified, so no one could enter. Somehow, because he was a Brahmin, and it was the daily schedule that the Brahmins would enter to take darshan of Kṛṣṇa, he slipped in with the other Brahmins. And when he got in, he saw all the beautiful palaces. He didn't know where to go next. He went to the first palace that he saw, which happened to be the palace of Rukmini. Now today is the appearance day of Rukmini, Rukmini Dwadasi, who's the goddess of fortune herself. She chose to appear as the daughter of Bhishmaka, who was the king of Vidarbha province in Maharashtra, in the city of Kundina. She had a number of brothers. The eldest amongst them was Rukmi. And Rukmini, even as a young child, because she lived as a princess in the home of her father, many sages and saints would come and they would speak about the glories of Lord Kṛṣṇa. So from the time of her childhood, she had decided she only wanted to marry Kṛṣṇa. But Rukmi, he was opposed to that marriage. All the inhabitants, including her own mother and father, they loved the idea. They felt that Kṛṣṇa was the only suitable person for Rukmini to marry. But Rukmi, he had a friend named Shishupal, and he was also very close to Jarasandha. So he was highly inimical to Kṛṣṇa. And there was no way that his sister was going to marry Kṛṣṇa. So Rukmini, also being a Kshatriyani, she knew the way of diplomacy. And because her brother was opposed to her marriage, she took matters in her own hands. And now we see, after the wonderful pastime of how she sent a message to Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa came and kidnapped her, brought her back to Dwarka. Now she's very pleasantly serving her husband in her palace in Dwarka. She has 10 sons, 1 beautiful daughter, and Kṛṣṇa is living very peacefully now, sitting on her bed along with his wife. She's fanning him. She would do everything personally for him, even though she had hundreds of beautiful servants. So from outside the door of the palace, Kṛṣṇa could understand that Sudāmā was standing. He immediately rose from his bed, ran to the door, ran and embraced this poor, niggardly, dirty-looking Brahmin. And Rukmini couldn't understand. Who is this person? Kṛṣṇa was embracing him. Kṛṣṇa was crying. Can you imagine what it takes to make the Supreme Lord cry? He was crying out of love for his friend, remembering all their times together in the Gurukula. Brings him in, sits him right on Rukmini's bed, washes his feet, embraces all the different parts of his body, decorates him with chandan, kumkum, aguru, offers him arti, bathes him, takes the water of that bath water, sprinkles it on his head, on his wife's head, and all of his family members' head. Rukmini can't understand anything. She's completely silent. So in this chapter, we start out with Parikshit Maharaj, 4 verses. Sukadeva Goswami, he had just been describing the pastimes of Balaram. Parikshit Maharaj, he only wanted to hear about Mukunda. He knew that Balaram was the elder brother of Kṛṣṇa. But he loved Kṛṣṇa so much, that's why his name was Parikshit. He was always searching for Kṛṣṇa, because he had his first darshan of Kṛṣṇa while he was still in the womb of his mother. And from the time of his birth, he was always looking for Kṛṣṇa. So after Sukadeva Goswami described the pastimes of Balaram, his pilgrimage, we just finished that chapter, Parikshit Maharaj pleaded with him, please tell me more about my Lord Mukunda. I want to hear more about his pastimes. So Parikshit Maharaj, what was his condition at that time? He had given up everything. given up his wife, given up his children, given up his kingdom, given up his wealth, his horses, his everything he gave up. He was sitting at the bank of the Ganga, hearing about the pastimes of Kṛṣṇa. He knew he was going to die within 7 days. Only a few days were left, 2 or 3 days were left until his time was coming. He was suffering. His only pleasure, he wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking. All he was imbibing was these pastimes of Kṛṣṇa. So he begged Sukadeva Goswami, you please tell me more about my Lord Kṛṣṇa. So out of all the pastimes at this time that Sukadeva Goswami chose to discuss, he chose this pastime of Sudāmā Brahman. Now this Sudāmā Brahman, he had nothing. Even Kṛṣṇa says in this sloka, he says, even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires. Although he was a grihasta, he never endeavored for anything. Whatever came of its own accord, that was what he would accept. Nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. This I am well aware of. So Sudāmā Brahman, he never aspired for any types of wealth or possessions. And here was Parikshit Maharaj, having just given up everything, only to hear about the Supreme Lord. So Sukadeva Goswami, he's now describing this beautiful pastime of the saintly Brahmin Sudāmā, who came now, they're sitting together, Kṛṣṇa and Sudāmā, they're holding each other's hands, face to face. Kṛṣṇa is crying. Sudāmā is completely silent. He's just drinking the nectar of being able to see his beloved friend Kṛṣṇa again. Kṛṣṇa's doing all the talking. 12 slokas. He's talking and talking and talking. Do you remember this pastime? Do you remember when we were living together? All the wonderful pastimes. Because just by seeing Sudāmā, he was becoming so excited, remembering his childhood. But Sudāmā was completely silent. He said nothing. Finally, Kṛṣṇa, in order to get Sudāmā to speak, he recalls to Sudāmā the blessings that they both got from Sandipani Muni. He repeats those blessings that were given to them when Sandipani Muni came into the forest and found them there the next morning. So finally, in the last 3 slokas of this particular chapter, finally, Sudāmā speaks. The Brahmin says, what could I possibly have failed to achieve, O Lord of Lords, O universal teacher, since I was able to personally live with you? That's all Sudāmā cared about, the fact that he had the Lord's personal association, whose every desire is fulfilled at the home of our spiritual master. O Almighty Lord, your body comprises the absolute truth in the form of the Vedas and is thus the source of all auspicious goals of life. That you took up residence at the school of a spiritual master is simply one of your pastimes in which you play the role of a human being. So as Kṛṣṇa was speaking to Sudāmā, and he was asking him, did you get married? Do you have a nice, faithful wife? What are your activities? Kṛṣṇa explained to Sudāmā that a Brahmin, he can either give up all desires and live as a renunciate, but actually that's not really possible. So it's better as a Brahmin that you live in the grihasta life and you do as I do, and that means set an example for everyone else. Because by following the Varna ashrama, therefore everyone will see that you're the ideal example and they will follow in your footsteps. So Kṛṣṇa praised Sudāmā that even though you have no material desires, you never aspire for wealth even though you're a grihasta. I know that you're doing all of this, always remembering me, simply to set an example for others. So Sudāmā, sitting face to face, holding Kṛṣṇa's hands, he was drinking the nectar of having direct darshan of Kṛṣṇa. He forgot everything else. He felt that he was already in Vaikuntha, which he was. And he completely forgot what his wife had asked him to go to Dwarka for. He never asked Kṛṣṇa for anything. And Kṛṣṇa, he had Sudāmā spend the whole night there. The next morning, he followed Sudāmā out of the gates, following him for a long time, saying farewell to his friend. Sudāmā was in complete bliss. He had spent the whole day and night with his friend Kṛṣṇa. He was now going back. He never thought for 1 minute, should I ask the Lord? It didn't even occur to him what he had come there for. He was going back home, simply remembering the wonderful exchange that he had with Kṛṣṇa. He never even dreamed that Kṛṣṇa was going to give him anything. Just the fact that he had darshan of the Lord, that was enough for him. So sometimes we can see in our own life, we might have so many troubles. Our father is sick, our mother is sick, our children are sick, we have so many financial obligations. How am I going to put my children through school? So many problems are going throughout our mind. We come to the temple, we take darshan of their lordships. What happens to all those problems? We don't think of those problems. We think, oh, look what does Kṛṣṇa have in his hands today? Gauraṇitai, they're dancing so sweetly. Radha and Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa's just playing his flute, Radharani's just dancing. All of our troubles go out of our mind when we come and take darshan of the Lord. Is that right? Everyone have that experience? Yes, we've all had that experience. We forget everything once we come before the Lord. So that's exactly the way Sudāmā Brahman was experiencing. He forgot everything. He just thought of the Lord. Now, when he went home to his shack, he saw, because Kṛṣṇa was contemplating, that first of all, this bag of rice that Sudāmā was keeping under his arm, now he had to walk 105 kilometers. You can imagine the condition of that bag of rice after walking 105 kilometers. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he describes this pastime. He said, that rice, which Kṛṣṇa called so sweet, it was full of perspiration, it was stinky, it was horrible. If you were to take 1 grain, you would just go, pa, pa. But when Kṛṣṇa, he demanded from Sudāmā, he said, did you bring me anything? And Sudāmā was so embarrassed. So what did Kṛṣṇa do? He forcibly grabbed that bag of chipped rice and took up some grains and put it in his mouth. He said, oh, this is so sweet. Now, why was it so sweet? Because it was all Sudāmā had to offer. It was given in complete love, and Kṛṣṇa accepted it. So, for the devotee, one can give so many beautiful things to Kṛṣṇa, but unless it's given with love, he's not interested. The sakas of Kṛṣṇa, saka means saka, they're eating along with Kṛṣṇa. Sometimes, when Kṛṣṇa and his cowherd boyfriends are sitting and having their lunch, because each of the mothers would make their lunch bags for their sons, one of the boys would say, oh, this is so nice, and he would start to eat it. Put it in his mouth, Kṛṣṇa would come over, grab it out of his mouth, and he would eat it. So that's saka, eating right along with Kṛṣṇa. So here was Sudāmā, one of Kṛṣṇa's friends, and here was this rice. Kṛṣṇa accepted it. When he went to take a second mouthful, Rukmini stopped him. She grabbed his hand. She said, no, please. Already, just by taking that first few grains, you have obliged me to give him all of the wealth of the entire universe. If you take a second morsel of those grains, I will have to go live in his house. You're not allowed to take any more. Enough. So this is the power of love when you give something to Kṛṣṇa. It doesn't matter what it is. Vidura, what did he give? He gave the peels of the bananas. He was so bewildered. Having Kṛṣṇa come to his house, he gave the peels, and Kṛṣṇa accepted it. The gopis, what could they give? They gave the sweetness of their lips. Each one of the Sabari, what did she give? She tasted the bear first to make sure they were sweet. All of these gifts were given in love. Now this is how we should serve Kṛṣṇa. Whether we can give 108 preparations, whether we can give a little chipped rice, the real ingredient is our love, and that's what Kṛṣṇa accepts. So this is another great lesson in this beautiful pastime, that if we're going to offer something to Kṛṣṇa, offer your love to Kṛṣṇa. What you're offering, Kṛṣṇa doesn't need anything. He wants our love. So these beautiful lessons that we learned from this pastime, Sudāmā, who had nothing, he was simply immersed in seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. He wanted nothing from the Lord. And the Lord, how did he reciprocate? Not because Sudāmā wanted anything. His wife, she just wanted to be able to serve her husband nicely. So Kṛṣṇa gave him all of the wealth of all the devatas in his own home. And still Sudāmā wasn't attached. He was thinking, if Kṛṣṇa actually loved me, he wouldn't have given me all this wealth. He would have given me pure devotional service. Therefore, whatever he has given me, I have to use everything in his service to increase my devotion. So very soon after, when Sudāmā Brahman returned to his home, he saw a palace. He saw so many beautiful men and women strolling in gardens by his house. All of this was the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, how he had turned his little shack into a heavenly planet. He used everything in Kṛṣṇa's service, and very soon after, he was able to return to his eternal residence in the spiritual world as a Suhrit Saka. That means because Kṛṣṇa had a very special relationship with Sudāmā as a Suhrit. Normally the Suhrits are like Balaram. They have a very protective relationship of Kṛṣṇa. They make sure that none of the demons come near Kṛṣṇa. They make sure that the other boys are serving Kṛṣṇa nicely. They're the well-wishers of Kṛṣṇa. So this was the relationship, the type of friendship that Sudāmā had with Kṛṣṇa. He had this Suhrit Saka Bhav. In the friends of Kṛṣṇa, they see Kṛṣṇa on an equal level, but some are older, some are younger, some are more intimate, they act more like servants, some have a Vatsalya mixed relationship. So this was the relationship that Sudāmā Brahman returned to into the spiritual world. So each one of us, we can take so many lessons from this chapter that Sudāmā Brahman, although he was a grihasta, although he had a wife, he was simply satisfied with whatever came of its own accord. And the grihastas also in our Kṛṣṇa consciousness society, they learn to live like that. They don't, most of them, the majority, they don't aspire for palatial homes. They're simply happy coming to the temple every day to do some service. Now, we have other examples of this pastime within our Kṛṣṇa consciousness society. Many times we would go out and open temples, and those temples would just be a little rented storefront, like we heard about 26 Second Avenue, things like that. So there was a devotee named Kalakanta. He wrote a Back to Godhead magazine article about this. And he had started a little temple in a place called Houston, Texas. Just a little place, a rented home on a place called Rosalie Street. And then many years later, he was invited to the grand opening of the Houston Temple. And he hadn't seen the Houston Temple for many years. So when he went back and he saw that they had built a magnificent temple, the deities were all installed, there were hundreds of devotees, he felt just like Sudāmā Brahman, that we had such a humble beginning. And now you look at this grand temple that has been built for the Supreme Lord. So we had the same experience here in Vrindavan. When we came here to Vrindavan, we didn't even have a place to live. We had some mud huts. Only the men could live in the mud huts. The ladies had nowhere to live. We had to live where the deities were living. We would sleep at their feet every night because we had nothing. The deities were living in Prabhupada's house, and because we were serving their lordships every day, so at nighttime we would just lie down in front of them and go to sleep. Now, many years later, look at the beautiful temple we have. You see? MVT, all the different palatial places we have now for our guests to stay, expanding more and more and more. Wherever you go now, you go to Govardhan, we have a place. We're getting places in Barsana, we're getting everywhere. ISKCON is expanding. So from a very humble beginning, just as Prabhupada, when he started ISKCON, such a humble beginning at 26 2nd Avenue. Now we have over 800 temples all over the world. So this is what Kṛṣṇa does. When he sees that the devotees remain humble, they're satisfied with whatever Kṛṣṇa gives them, then he gives them everything that can be used in his service. So as we go out with our preaching, we shouldn't be afraid, just as when Kṛṣṇa, Balaram, and Sudāmā went out to collect the wood. When we're sent out for preaching, either the buses, however we may go, for lecturing, wherever we travel, we shouldn't be afraid to leave our, as Sarvabhauma was saying, our comfort zones. We should go out, we should preach, and certainly, whatever is required, when Kṛṣṇa sees that we are ready to use everything in his service, he will give us all the opulence we need in order to make beautiful temples, in order to attract hundreds of devotees, so that everything can be used in his service. So we should remember Sudāmā Brahman, how he had nothing. He simply went out with Kṛṣṇa to collect the wood. Kṛṣṇa remembered all of those beautiful pastimes. In the end, Kṛṣṇa gave him the opulence of Vaikuntha, and then he returned to the spiritual world to serve Kṛṣṇa eternally in that friendship relationship. All right, so anyone have any questions? Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, you mentioned about desires, material desires. In that slok also it came, material desires.
Yes.
And it can be spiritual desire as well. And at the extreme most, if I can think of, is not desiring at all. So there can be three kind of things: material desires, spiritual desires, and not desiring at all.
Yes.
So my question is, Mataji, is this in our control? Is any of these that I do want to desire this or this or this? For example, if I'm talking about myself, I have given up at the level of my senses. For example, my tongue, at the level of my tongue, I do love feasts. Those 3 days were so...
Yes. That's fine.
Yeah. I love that feast.
Mm-hmm.
My tongue loved that. If I would be lying if I'm saying I love everything. Yeah. So is desiring in our control? And the second question is you talked about the most important ingredient is love.
Yes.
So offer your love to Kṛṣṇa.
Yes.
So two words, offering and love.
Yeah.
So can we create that love? Because it's not in our hands, this thing. I can't say that I'm just standing up and I'm loving everyone. No. It's not coming voice. Yeah. So, bhav, emotions, is this also in our hands? Is this also in our control? Can we create love? And how to offer?
Okay.
Yeah.
So your first question, Kṛṣṇa answers that in the coming slokas, in the 12 slokas that he speaks here. He says, it's not possible to be desireless. Desire means consciousness. When we're conscious, we have desire. But we can choose what type of desires we have. For instance, you gave the example of a feast. You love to have feasts. Yes. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, those are all desires that we have. They could be mundane or they can be spiritual. The difference between material desire and spiritual desire is the addition of Kṛṣṇa. We might want to eat, but if we first offer it to Kṛṣṇa, and what we offer becomes prasadam, then it becomes spiritual eating. So that is the difference. Mundane or material desires means without Kṛṣṇa, and spiritual desires means adding Kṛṣṇa to everything that you have. And you can add Kṛṣṇa to all of your desires. You can have children for Kṛṣṇa. You can build a beautiful temple for Kṛṣṇa. You can make a beautiful feast for Kṛṣṇa. Otherwise, without Kṛṣṇa, these are mundane and they're entangling for us to take birth again and again. Now, your second question was about love. So we'll take the example of Rukmini. Rukmini, who was just a little girl, she didn't know who Kṛṣṇa, she wasn't born knowing about Kṛṣṇa. She heard from the sages. Narada Muni, other great sages would come and would talk about Kṛṣṇa. If we want to increase our love for Kṛṣṇa, it means we have to hear about him. We have to hear about all of his glorious qualities, pastimes, all of the wonderful, his abode, why he comes here. So by hearing about Kṛṣṇa, we increase our love for Kṛṣṇa. So that's how we love Kṛṣṇa, by hearing. And that's why Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. First we hear, then we tell others about Kṛṣṇa, then we remember Kṛṣṇa, and then all the different types of service come after that. So you have to hear regularly, and then your love for Kṛṣṇa will increase, just as Rukmini Devi's love increased to the point where she overstepped all morality, begged Kṛṣṇa to come and kidnap her, and she became the principal queen of Kṛṣṇa. Okay? Thank you. So please come to class every day. Come to class every day. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thanks for the wonderful class. So the question is, we saw in this pastime, so there are three elements. What I try to understand is the intention, the execution, and then there is a gap. So typically, like now in this case, Sudāmā went with an intention that he has to ask, like his wife said, you go and ask for something. That was his intention. But when we went there, his execution was completely opposite. Whatever he wanted to ask, he completely forgot. But the end result, you saw, he got whatever was his intention was. Though Kṛṣṇa understood because he was Paramatma. But Kṛṣṇa is Paramatma. So typically, when we perform some activity, our intentions are good. But since we don't have much experience, and especially with the devotee community, our execution may not be perfect. But our intention is to satisfy or please our Guru, Gauranga and the devotees. But the execution may not be right because of lack of experience. So what is your comment on that? How does Kṛṣṇa looks into this, or how does our Guru or Srila Prabhupada, what do they think, what they will think about? Is they look really at the intention or the execution matters a lot?
Well, first of all, as his wife was imploring him to go see Kṛṣṇa, Sudāmā he didn't care about asking Krishna for anything. He was thinking, yes, it would be a good idea to get his darshan. So his intention was just to take darshan. His intention was in no way to ask anything of Krishna. He just wanted to go see Krishna and have the opportunity to again be with his friend. So that's one correction there. His intention was not to ask for anything. The execution was perfectly done because Krishna understood his heart, and therefore he never offered anything. They never discussed the desire of his wife. Simply they enjoyed each other's association together. So our intention, first of all, has to be pure. And pure means when the spiritual master asks you to do something, our attention should be to fulfill that, no matter how difficult it might be, right? So then the execution, from within and from without, we will get the direction how to fulfill that order given by the spiritual master. So sometimes we might have an intention that is not what our spiritual master actually wants us to do, and therefore the execution will be faulty. But if we have a direct order from the spiritual master, and this is the importance of serving the spiritual master, pleasing him, because then he will bless you with instructions, what he wants you to do. And you take those instructions as your life and soul, and you try your best to carry them out. Now, sitting right behind you is Satyanarayan Prabhu, right? He has one of the most difficult services in the whole society to the Far East printing of books in countries that are opposed to Krishna consciousness. But because he knows he's going to get the blessings of Srila Prabhupada for doing this, he overcomes all the obstacles, and one by one, the books are all getting translated. So the most important thing is getting the blessings of the spiritual master to execute his orders, and then that execution will be, you're not even concerned with successful or unsuccessful. When Prabhupada went to America, he had no idea how he was going to execute the instructions of his spiritual master. He was just going because he knew that was the order. And see what has happened as a result of that. So really the most important thing is serve your spiritual master, get blessings, get instructions from him, and then carry out those instructions for the remainder of your life. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. In your humility, sincere humility, you forgot to mention one example of a saint who has started with nothing, virtually nothing, and now has everything. And that's you. When you first invited us into Prabhupada's family more than 50 years ago, we all had nothing. You had very little. We had nothing. And now I can see, over 50 years later, that you have everything.
Yes.
You have so much you're so full of love for Srila Prabhupada, and so full of love for Kṛṣṇa. Thank you very much.
Vijeta and his wife, they were sleeping at the Juhu beach, is that correct? Yes,
Under the Shiva tree.
they were hippies. And we found them at the Juhu beach and invited them to the Juhu temple, which was just a shack at that time. And they met Srila Prabhupada, they became devotees. I remember his wife, she begged one of my saris from me, I gave her my favorite sari. And we all grew up together with nothing. And then they came here in 1975, took initiation from Prabhupada. They served in India for quite some time. And then they went back to Canada, and they have a family, 3 children, correct? 5 children. 5 children they brought up in Krishna consciousness. And now they've come back for the 50th anniversary. And you see the example of so many devotees. We all come empty-handed. We come with nothing. I'm still empty-handed. But so many devotees, they have been given facilities by Prabhupada and by Kṛṣṇa to do so much service for the Lord and for Srila Prabhupada because of their qualifications. So simply we have to take the order of our spiritual master, aspire to fulfill those orders, and Kṛṣṇa will give everything that we need for making that order successful. I think Mataji had one question in the back.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for the very nice class. My question is not related to the class, but it's related to...
Then you can ask me after the class.
Okay.
Okay, because it's 9:10 already, okay? Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.